Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for sticking with us and clicking on this video. But if you're new to our channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you are aware anytime we post, and join the tribe. Subscribe and join the tribe. And without any further delay, let's get right into the video. The very first thing I like to do during a consultation is to define what a lock is. Okay, and even though the definition may seem very simple and you're like, duh, who doesn't know what a lock is, the reason why I take time to explain what a lock is that when we start talking about lock maintenance, okay, and why, especially if you've been a loose natural for a long time, you've been responsible for your own hair care, why lock maintenance or lock care is very, very different than loose natural hair. It makes more sense if from the very beginning we have defined and understood what a lock is. So bear with me while I tell you what you think you already know. All right? And I am going to repeat it 3 times. Yes, that's the teacher in me. A lock, in its simplest possible form, is an elongated collection of tangles. Okay? However you achieve those tangles, whether it was that you just left your hair to tangle on its own, you were just washing and not detangling or combing, and that was how the tangles formed. Whether you deliberately by yourself, whatever method you used, you deliberately by yourself put tangles in your hair, or whether you went to a loctician to have them install the tangles, each lock is an elongated, long collection of tangles, however those tangles were achieved. I'm going to say it one more time. A lock is an elongated collection of tangles. So in the lock world, tangles and tangling, those are not bad words. Those are good words. Tangling or tangles are a good thing. That's what you want. Yes, your locks are just made up of lots and lots and lots of tiny tangles. Keep that at the back of your mind. I'm going to come back to this when we start talking about lock maintenance. So the next thing I like to talk about is lock techniques and their advantages and disadvantages. So there are several kinds of lock techniques. I just alluded to some of them. Those of us who went into locks for religious reasons, and I know this is very common, those people who are from West Africa and probably from parts of the Caribbean, shout out to my Jamaican friends, will probably understand what I'm talking about when I say a lot of the time when people go into locks for religious reasons, they tend to freeform or semi-freeform. And that's when you don't do much to your locks. You're not intentionally creating parts the way a loctician would. You're essentially just leaving your hair alone. You keep it clean, you wash regularly, frequently, because we're trying to get locks right. We're not trying to create like cesspools of disease. So you let your locks do their thing, you let them find their way. The individual locks tend to be like all different sizes, and that's when you hear, oh, no two heads of locks are the same, because the way my locks may choose, the shape they may choose to take, would then largely depend on my lifestyle, how I sleep, what activities I'm involved in, because all I'm doing is just letting my hair be and letting it find its own path. A slight alteration to free-forming is what some people call semi-free-forming. So yes, you're kind of leaving your hair to do its own thing, right? But most people who semi-free-form usually started out with parts, Okay, so whether they put those parts in by themselves or they had a friend or a loctician, whoever, put the parts in for them, thereafter they may not necessarily go in to like find the parts again. They've created the parts, put the locks in, or tangle their hair with whatever method, and then subsequently they just let the hair be. Some of them may go in once or twice a year, or maybe once a month, and just separate those locks very gently, but for the most part, outside of washing, they don't do much to their locks. Okay, so that's free forming and semi free forming. All right, but for those of you who are interested in the more polished look, especially for those who maybe work in corporate, whose jobs involve them interacting with their customer service base or client base, or representing the organization in whatever way, I find that such people tend to usually be interested in a more put together, more polished kind of look. Again, no shade. People have to do what they have to do, and you like what you like. Absolutely no shade to such people. Such people might be interested in any of the other methods I'm about to talk about. Okay, so I'm going to start out from the techniques that take the lock installation techniques that take the least amount of time, that require the least amount of skill, and as a consequence, because they take the least amount of time and they require the least amount of skill, they tend to be cheaper. Okay, so keep this in mind when you begin to talk about the cost of your installation or the cost of maintenance with your loctician. Okay, these are some of the things that affect pricing. All right, so on the one end of the spectrum, right, when we talk about the ones that are really quick to install and require the least amount of skill, you have what is called the comb coils. All right, some people don't even use a comb. They do what is called finger coiling. So you basically take a piece of hair and you twirl that around your finger. A lot of people, well, depending on how kinky your hair is or how loose your texture is, a lot of people find that they may need to use some form of holding product just to hold the lock in place, at least until it dries completely. So beeswax used to be very common in the past. I think most locticians have moved away from that, because it does have its own drawbacks. I think the most common of which is thinning. Okay, so many of us, especially if we're from West Africa, from the Caribbean, have aunties and uncles, relatives, friends, colleagues, who might have had their locks for 10 years or more. One of the things you notice is that usually when they get to that point, it's rare to find somebody who has had their locks for that long just wearing their head down, especially if they started their installation or they do their maintenance with product. The reason being that at that point, the hair becomes so heavy. So in the beginning, right, when you are doing your installation or your maintenance with product, whatever product you're using, whether beeswax, whether gel, whatever you want to call it, if you're doing it with product, in the beginning, first, let me say 5 years, you tend, well, again, depending on how fast your hair grows, for the first 5 years, you tend not to notice the weight of your hair. But trust and believe, no matter how light-handed you think you're being, in order to hold that lock in place, if you are doing either finger coils or comb coils with product, by the time you've had these locks for like 10 years or more, especially when you're washing it or you're in the pool or at the beach and water, the hair is completely saturated with water, people will tell you that it feels almost like somebody tied like a brick to their hair. Like it's difficult, I'm talking about like butt length locks or hair, locks that are like way down your back to your hips. You really do feel the weight of your hair. In fact, I don't like to describe it as the weight of your hair. I like to describe it as the weight of the accumulated product over time. And the reason I say this is this. If you talk to people who have locks but have installed and maintained their locks manually or with basically just water and oil, they'll tell you that probably the only time they feel the weight of their locks is when there's water in it. And even at that, it doesn't necessarily feel like they can feel, yeah, okay, I can feel the water in my hair, but it doesn't feel heavy all the time. Okay, they are also way less likely to have the thinning that you have at the roots with people who have been consistently using products in their hair for 10 or more years. Okay, so for people who start with comb coils or finger coils and then continue using product over the years, one of the disadvantages you're going to see is that when the hair becomes too heavy, when that accumulated product, then adds up, right? And the hair becomes too heavy, the weight of the long lock then begins to pull, at the root, at the base, close to the scalp, and can cause thinning. And so very few of it's rare to find people who have had their locks for 10 years or more just wearing their hair down, walking around with their hair loose. Most of them would either try to wear it, on top of their head, or, turban it, or, keep it like, up here so that the weight is more evenly distributed, and then they don't have to deal with problems of thinning, especially I think, and it's for them, it's usually worse at the front, and then you begin to see, especially at the front, at the temples, and the hair begins to recede more and more and more and more and more. So that's one disadvantage of starting with comb coils or finger coils if you are using product. Okay, if you're not using product, the immediate disadvantage that you would notice is that you're going to have to need to be doing your maintenances way more frequently, especially if you're somebody who likes that neat, clean, polished look. You like your edges to always, which my edges are not doing right now, as you can see. But if you're one of those people who you like your edges to always look snatched and right and tight, then maybe finger coils and comb coils are not the way to go. If you decide to opt for this, you may find that you're going to have to be doing your maintenance either every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. I do not advise, whatever kind of lock you do, I don't advise that you do it more frequently than 2 weeks. In my book, honestly, retightening your hair or retwisting your hair every 2 weeks is too much, sincerely speaking. The most frequently I would advise you to retighten your hair, and I'm talking specifically to those who retwist or retighten with finger coils, comb coils, or palm rolling, is every 3 weeks. Anything more frequent than every 3 weeks, I'm going to leave it at that. It's too much. It's too much. You really need to consider whether you should switch maintenance methods, or whether locks are even for you. I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, but I feel like I say this almost every video I make. There's an aesthetic that comes with having locks. Okay, it is not that snatched, tight, and right aesthetic. All right. Yes, I know that many of us decided, oh, we want to get locks because of some celebrities we saw, and those celebrities can often spot like really, really gorgeous hairstyles. I like you to think about it this way. You see those celebrities when they're on the stage, when they're performing, when they are doing their best to look as glamorous as they can. What I would encourage you to do is to go look for their photographs or videos when they're like, shopping for groceries, taking a walk in the neighborhood park, or when they wake up in the morning. They are not always snatched, okay? Because if they were, they won't have any edges for you to be admiring, okay? So do your due diligence, do your research. Please do not follow people blindly. All right. Another relatively cheap um, way of starting your locks that doesn't require too much skill um, is twist. You know, most people know how to do your two-strand twist. It doesn't require too much skill. Some people are very good with their lines, creating their parts. Some people don't care much. The important thing is you grab a section of hair and then you twist down, right? Very easy. Doesn't necessarily require a loctician. I tell people, unless you're somebody who is crazy about your grade, anybody can put in micro twists or two-strand twists in their hair. Okay, so that's that. Another one is just doing braids. Okay, the advantage, right, I usually try to point out that twists have over braids is that for those who are volume challenged, okay, so if you like big hair, or maybe not necessarily like you like big hair, but if your hair strands are very fine, or as some people like to say, if your hair is scanty, right? So if you're one of those people, if we part a line, just one line in your hair, it's like the Red Sea parting. Then maybe you might want to go the twist route, because one thing you're going to notice about twists is that while you're twisting, right, it may be long and kind of like straight and compact, but the moment you let go of a twist, it shrinks, bounces back, and expands. Okay, so the advantage of twist is that at least on installation day, the look tends to be less scalpy. You tend to see less scalp. Okay, um, but if volume or density is not your problem, then I would advise braid locks. Another category I would advise to get braid locks are people who have permed hair or straight, relatively straighter hair or loose curl pattern. So if your hair is really, really baby soft, and for some people it's not all of their hair, right? For some people it's just the hair at the nape of their neck, right? The rest of their hair, is. I've had people who might be 4A in the very front, 4B in the center, and then 3C in the back. Okay, so for people who have that kind of mixed hair type, or if all of your hair is like really soft, or you have a perm, or your entire head is like a looser curl pattern, then I would advise braid locks. The reason being that it's the most will I say rigid structure um, relative to all the other ones where you're not freeforming, right? And so with braid locks, usually there tends to be little to no slippage, okay, or unraveling. Not that it cannot happen, but it's way less common that you would have with comb coils, or in fact, in that category of people, if your hair is permed, I wouldn't advise twist at all. They won't stay in. So braid locks tend to be much more secure and tend to firm better than whether twists or comb coils or finger coils or even interlocking.